What's up everybody, Theo here. I'm going over doing my review of Tower Fantasy. So Tower Fantasy has been out for over 2 months now. This video is going to be going over my general thoughts on the game, going over the different aspects of it over the course of my time playing it. When I first released my initial thoughts video, I did say that there's going to be comparisons to Genshin, considering that Genshin is like the golden standard in terms of gacha, mobile slash PC slash console, even though Tower Fantasy is a console games, and it is the most successful. So Tower Fantasy, using that in comparison, is a good standard, and it means to compare and kind of see where it's at and how it weighs in, comparing to the big beast that is Mr. Genshin Impact. So without further ado, let's break it down, get into it. First of all, I will be going over spoilers if you do care about the story. If you care about the story, I'm sorry, because something's probably wrong with you. The story is in fact a story, and that is just about it. It's a story. It is not a good one. It is a story. That's really all there is to just say about that. From my initial thoughts, my opinion hasn't changed. The first hour or so of the story was kind of interesting regarding Zeke and Shirley. The main character doesn't really seem to have a place in all this. He's just kind of there as you're going through this, or your character, I should say. Where you fit in all this never really is explained to you, and how you're relevant to this all. You're just kind of there and you're helping. It is a lot different compared to, say, like the Traveler. You kind of start off, you end up in the world of Tavat. You're trying to find your sister or your brother based off of who you picked. We're just kind of in the middle of this shit, as you start off in like a sewer pipe and you kill stuff, and then you end up out in the world where you start, and that's pretty much it for Tower Fantasy. The characters are extremely one-dimensional. I know people say that about Genshin characters, but the Tower Fantasy characters have even less substance and less personality compared to anything I've seen anything else. What the end game is isn't really explained. There's some stuff going on at the Tower Fantasy. There's Vita, and how long that's going to go on for, I don't know. It's just kind of very one-dimensional on the story. There's no big pictures really revealed. It's just you versus another group, and how Zeke and Shirley get caught in all this, and your perspective from it all. And that's pretty much it. So as of right now, I guess the next patch, big patch, is going to be coming up here, which will have more story to do and unlock. How much story we're going to get remains to be seen. We've had weeks and weeks now where the story has just been done, and we're waiting for the next big chapter here. So the question really is, going forward, are we going to be getting 1 hour? Are we getting 8? Are we getting 20? I'd say ultimately the story, you know, I spent not too much time doing it. It's all very skippable. I saw pretty much any other person I saw playing the game was doing the exact same thing. I haven't seen anybody express any interest in the story at all, because it's just so bland. The characters aren't interesting, and that's it. So let's get into combat. Combat overall is probably one of the better parts of the game. It's very solid, found outside of some issues which we'll get into. The main core mechanic of combat is the 3 weapon system. You have 3 different types of weapons. You have either offensive weapons, defensive weapons, or support weapons. The combination of those 3 determines the buff you have, as well as the elemental types you can have as well. There's of course electric, there's fire, there's ice, and then there's physical. Your combination of those 3 also determines the buff that you might have as well. The big thing that Tower Fantasy has, instead of artifacts, they have what they call matrices. You have 4 per weapon. Different sets give different buffs, as well as they each have their own substat, which are all set. Those subsets are based off the rarity of them, either 3, 4, or 5 star. Determine how good they will be and how much stats they will give as you continue to level them up. The way weapons and matrices work is very fluid. Makes sense. It feels good. The only thing is, when it comes to these, is that leveling them up and getting all the materials and everything for them can be grindy at times. It takes a lot of time or money to spend in order to get resources in order to pour into those weapons. Especially when you start to go into making different builds, leveling different weapons. It really does require either money or just time to waiting for your resin-like resource to kind of put materials and get those from spending that. Later in the game, enemies will have different resistances. This is where the game starts to get really annoying. Like I was saying, right, resistances, the way they work is if a enemy has a weakness to one element, they take increased damage of that element, but everything else, you're going to get a 50% nerf on that element. So this can be really annoying in the fact that when it comes to having multiple weapons and different builds, it takes a lot of resources, takes a lot of time. So if you just don't have the right build for the weaknesses that the enemies have, you're kind of fucked. You're just going to be doing half damage to them. And this is where the game kind of wants you to be a little bit of a whale, or you just have to write it out and hope somebody else in your party, if you're doing online content, has those materials or has those weapons needed for those enemies. Kind of help balance those things out. When it comes to enemies in the game, the enemies in the outside world are pretty mild. They're pretty much a joke. The more mid-level enemies, the ones that get shields, can be annoying at times. There's a few that are kind of troll, have abilities that are hard to dodge, avoid, or what the defensive mechanic is do like a perfect dodge. Your dash is how you essentially avoid damage. You get iframes when doing a dodge. Actually, I don't know if that's true. But dodging at the right time can perform a slow down matrix time event, in which case the enemies move slow. If you're in the bubble, you do damage to them, kind of chance to kind of lay down the damage as they're kind of frozen in time for a minute. Some enemies, these abilities, these like time stops, are extremely hard to activate. More specifically, those are going to be on the bosses. There's one boss specifically that comes to mind where trying to proc that was damn near impossible, and especially if there's any sort of lag, it's just good luck, you know, go next, because it's not happening. The bosses overall in the game are pretty dog shit in my opinion. A lot of them have super cheap mechanics, are just really fucking annoying moves. Some of them just feel so cheesy and punishable, where you can just get easily one shot or destroyed. Massive AoEs. If you don't have the right builds and equipment, you will just get fucking destroyed. If you're not higher end geared from whaling or just absolutely grinding the game, you will just, it's way easier to die. You'll just do less damage. These are some of the bad parts of the combat. Yeah, where it's just feels very grindy, and it's very rewarding to people who are whales and are just willing to pour money into the game. Because if you don't have a certain level gear score, you just do less damage, you just take more damage, especially during certain bosses and later on in the game. This isn't an issue until then, where you can legit just get hit, CC'd, and then hit again and you're just dead. And it's just fucking stupid to the point where there's no way to counter certain mechanics. You just have to either just not do damage, just dodge, or just hope you don't die. And it's not the best option, let's just say that. It doesn't feel as great when it comes to battling bosses, just due to how cheap mechanics are, how often these bosses will move around, can't be CC'd, just dash around. You'll use an ability, they'll instantly move, hold on to your cooldown, so fucking move again anyways. It's certain things like that where it's just not good coding, not good design. It's just felt lazy. When it comes to gameplay, exploring the world is a lot of fun. Going through, seeing the little white diamonds on the map, trying to get the little nuclei that we get out of them in order for us to make wishes. I'll go over more of that in a second. Going through, really stripping the map of everything is a lot of fun. Very similar to Genshin and how that works. Kind of go through, just do different puzzles out in the world just to get all the resources and gear that you can. In this case, instead of primos, you do get actual wishes. You get black nuclei and gold nuclei from playing the game. And then I'll go more again on that here in a second. In regards to events going on in the game, over the course of 2 months, it's been a little bit since I've turned the game on. There's been a few events. They've all been pretty meh. Nothing really exciting. The rewards have just been okay. Red nuclei wishes, which you can only have to pay for, or you have to use in-game resources for those. One concern I had was during the events, there was a event which was pretty much recycled from the first event to right before I really quit. It was literally the exact same concept. I think it was slightly different in name. They give you currency which you have to pay for, or you get very few of them just for playing the game. You spend them, it's like a slot machine. As you spend it, there's chances to get different rewards. Of course, the better rewards are more rare to come by, so you have to, in order really spend money in order to really see those rewards come to see what you get. But the fact that over the course of 2 months you're getting recycled events was pretty concerning to me. This game does have ruins in it, which is the equivalent of like the trials, I guess, in Genshin. Not the trials, but the domains. You do them 3 times. You do them on easy, then you do normal, and then on hard. Those difficulties unlock as your level increases. In your character, your level is just spread across all characters, as well as that your weapons are also combined to characters. You can either use your custom character that you create at the beginning, or the character that's linked to those weapons, your 4 or 5-star weapons as well. So let's talk about the gacha, which is what this game is pretty much all about. Being a gacha, I thought that this is probably the most generous gacha game I've ever played. The amount of wishes I got and the amount of wishes I spent was pretty vast. I spent $0 on the game. I technically spent $5 just for the reoccurring thing where you get gems every single day, or their I forget what the currency is called. The little cubes, which you use so you can turn into wishes. You get like 100 or 150 each day. It's decent, not the best, not the worst. But the amount of wishes you get just from playing it, and the fact that the way the banners work is totally different compared to Genshin Impact was really nice. So of course in Genshin, as soon as you get a 5-star, that banner resets till you get your next 90. Which is where your hard pity is to get your next 5-star. The way it works in Tower of Fantasy is the standard banners for characters, or in this case weapons, they are one and the same. The way matrices work feel more like weapons, since those are the main components to upgrading them, not the actual weapons themselves. But anyways, you can get multiple 5-stars before you hit the hard 80 pity mark, which is very, very nice. I thought it was great and I loved it. At one point before my first 80, I believe I got 3 total 5-stars all in one set of 80 wishes, which is very nice. That, with the fact that getting wishes feels very not as grindy, just from playing the game over time, exploring the world. You get black nuclei, gold nuclei, different gems which you can use to buy red nuclei, which can be spent on the time-limited banners, much like right now we have the Sino and Venti banner in Genshin Impact. The limited rolling banner, essentially, those are what the red nuclei are for. The amount of different banners there are was nice too, so having a gold banner, gold nuclei banner, black nuclei banner, as well as a red nuclei banner, then having different banners for matrices as well, felt really good. There's a rolling red nuclei banner for characters or weapons. There's also another one for matrices. The matrices are also based off the set for the character that's out of that time. So if you want a hardcore whale, get a certain character, get all their matrices as well, you can do that. One thing I thought was also really interesting is the amount of black nuclei you get is the easiest one to come by. The interesting thing about the black nuclei banner is that there is no pity on it, since it is essentially an endless resource. You can get a ton of them over time. They're constantly respawning. There's ways to get more of them every single day just from logging in. So going to my channel here in this video, this was the first time I actually got a 5-star on the black nuclei banner, which you can see right here. And per the title, it was just under 600 wishes before I got it. I believe they said the rate that you get it at is 0.3, but that is bullshit, because at that rate, 0.3% chance to get a 5-star. So by that logic, right, you would need to do 333 wishes to average approximately a 5-star. Well, the first one I got was around 600, and the second one I got was also close to 600. So that's kind of feels like some bullshit. I saw people with close to the same numbers. Some people waited even longer to get there first. Yeah, so the 0.3% kind of seemed like bullshit, even though the generosity in the other banners was really nice, with the ability to just get multiple 5-stars all before you hit that hard pity mark. That was pretty nice. In regards to the music, it was pretty decent. I can't really complain too much. The music was pretty good, fitting different scenarios, different landscapes, different areas. It all was pretty good. I really can't complain. Nothing exceptional, nothing bad. Solid really fit different areas, and I felt like they fit the different themes of different lands as well. So ultimately, for my verdict, is Tower Fantasy better than Genshin Impact? No, it's not really even close. If somebody was going to start playing a gacha and they were just like, well, or even just wanted to play a new game, right? Because I think you could easily play Genshin or you could play Tower Fantasy and go free to play. No problems asked. If somebody was going to start playing either Tower Fantasy or Genshin Impact today, which one would you recommend? It's like, well, Tower Fantasy's been out for about close to 3 months now. The content is currently stopped and gatekept as we wait for the next patch. Meanwhile, Genshin Impact has over 2 years of content. There's 4 different regions to explore. You have Mondstadt, Liyue, Inazuma, and Sumeru now, which is also being updated and we're getting more areas of Sumeru with time, I'm assuming. You also have the underground cavern, and you also have the other underground area as well. There's just so much more to do in a game that's more polished and just has more content. It's just more fluid. It's just better. You just have to be more conservative with your primo gems in a game like Genshin Impact compared to Tower Fantasy. The only thing Tower Fantasy really does better is, I would say, is just the gacha. That's really it. They're definitely more generous and it's not as predatory in my opinion compared to Genshin. But that doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, Genshin is pretty much a better game in almost every single way. The combat, I'll be generous and I'll say it's a wash. But when it comes to the story, Genshin Impact has a much better developed story, even though that does have its own flaws. The characters aren't the most exciting in Genshin Impact, but they're still better than the ones we have in Tower Fantasy. Both games have waifus. If that's your thing, that's a wash. The only thing Tower Fantasy does better is gacha, because music, even though it's good in Tower Fantasy, it's definitely better in Genshin Impact. So, I mean, Tower Fantasy at the end of the day kind of feels like a cheap knockoff. I mean, this is also a game that's been called out for plagiarizing different things as well as like trailers from other games. Some of the mechanics you can tell just really feel copy and pasted from Genshin, and that's kind of the direction that they wanted to go. Ultimately, I give Tower Fantasy a 6 out of 10. It's a decent game. It is not without its flaws. For a game that's already been out for several years in China, it's not near as popular as Genshin is there in China as well. I would hope there'd be more quality of life and more things patched up compared to the amount of bugs, the amount of buggy combat and cheap mechanics bosses have. It's not near where I would hope it to be. It sucks though, because the weapons, you know, the gacha and the matrices are all good systems. The grind is just not as rewarding, it feels like, as well as just nothing in the game really pulls you in. Playing a gacha for the sake of just getting more doesn't really feel motivating. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it really is Diet Genshin Impact. That's what it feels like. So that's going to be it for this one. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on Tower Fantasy. If you've even tried it, what you think of it compared to Genshin Impact. I felt like it was really nice, especially going from Tower Fantasy right back into Genshin Impact. Getting a good comparison between the two. I wish Tower Fantasy was better. It does some things actually pretty well, but it's just... it is what it is. It's never going to compete with a game like Genshin, which has far more money and resources to be improved. So with that, let me know your comments down below what your thoughts are. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe to the channel. Greatly helps me out. Also, I do greatly appreciate it as well. But that's going to be it for this one. I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you all have a fantastic day, fantastic week. Until next time, peace. Deuces. See ya.